it's a good transition to a conversation we're very excited about at FedEx, which is going to bring two people that are truly disrupting healthcare. First, Dr. Chatterjee, a doctor that has swapped prescriptions to practical habits, which is impacting the lives of millions of people, providing a better life, a happier life. He's a best-selling author. He's a BBC broadcaster. He's the founder of a massive podcast called Feel Better, Live More. And we have also George Pallis, the CEO and founder of Voy. Talked about it a bit earlier today. Prior to Voy, George scaled TransferWise, where he was leading growth. He was also CMO of Deliveroo. And we're very humbled to have him, to be able to partner with him. Voy is today a $400 million AR company, offering a digital experience around healthcare, providing preventive care and providing companionship. Only in 2 markets so far, in UK and Brazil, and expanding now in Germany and other markets. To handle this discussion, I'll be very happy to welcome on board my partner and friend, Suzanne, let's talk about living better and living more.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for also coming back from the break. I know there were a lot of good connections and conversations being formed, so we're very grateful for your time here. We're very excited to have our next panel on living better, living more, which I'm sure is an aspiration that many of us, or all of us here in the room, share. We all live in a time where health and well-being has never felt more important, and yet it's also something which many of us really struggle to achieve. Both at a personal level and at a society-wide level. And just to give a sense of the scale of the challenge, healthcare spend now accounts for $25 trillion globally. It's over 10% of global GDP. It's also growing at double-digit rates due to aging population, rising chronic diseases, and increasing healthcare spend. So I'm thrilled today to discuss how we can tackle these questions together with 2 people who are really leading at the forefront of this, Dr. Rangan Chatterjee and George, founder and CEO of Voy. Thank you both so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having us.
To start off with, I would love to talk a bit about the transformation or the shift from reactive treatment to preventative, proactive health. We all know that the existing healthcare systems are broken. They were very much built 100 years ago to treat diseases. They're unsustainable, they're incredibly expensive to run, and they often lead to worse outcomes. You both are passionate about sort of increasing health span and taking a much more preventative, proactive approach. Perhaps we could start with how do you define that, and what do you see as some of the biggest challenges facing our health systems today to address that? Maybe Dr. Chatterjee, you could start.
Yeah, so I think, the health landscape of, I was going to say the UK, but frankly, the entire world has changed dramatically, particularly in the last 30 or 40 years. And sickness is now becoming the new norm. I think back to Azim's slide earlier on about what's going to be scarce in the future. It's going to be health and vitality. It's becoming more and more scarce with every passing year. So as we as a species become more hyper-technical and we talk about what we can do with AI and all these incredible things, the uncomfortable truth I look at as a doctor is that with all this technology, societally, our health is getting worse. And that sits very uncomfortably with me, and it doesn't have to be that way. Now, I think one of the big challenges, as you sort of mentioned, Susan, is that we as doctors are trained to treat disease primarily with pharmaceutical drugs. If you understood how we were trained, that is primarily what the bulk of our education is around. Now, that works for some things, but 80 to 90% of what we now see as doctors is in some way related to our collective modern lifestyles. That's not putting blame on people, that's just a reality. And so when you try and put our system of training onto that, it causes friction and it doesn't work. We're really good at some things, but we're not good at those 80 to 90% of conditions that are driven by our behaviors. So number one, medical training I don't think is fit for purpose today for the bulk of the problems. The second element of that, which I think is really interesting and also provides an opportunity, is that we get involved in medicine very, very late. So take something like type 2 diabetes, for example, which is crippling most healthcare systems. Type 2 diabetes actually starts in your body 10 years before you get the diagnosis. So you can keep coming along that curve, getting sicker, your energy's going down, your belly's getting bigger, your blood sugar's creeping up. But because it hasn't crossed the threshold into type 2 diabetes, we'll send you away. We'll say everything's fine, come back next year. Alzheimer's, which again is becoming more and more of a concern for many people, that goes on in the body 30 to 40 years before you get a diagnosis. And the crazy thing is, we can actually detect all of those things early. So the healthcare system is simply not set up for prevention. And speaking here in the UK, that National Health Service, I've come to the conclusion over the last years that the NHS will never be able to do prevention because it's not in its DNA. We need a brand new system that really looks at prevention at its heart. So I could talk for 10 hours on this, but those are two sort of top line thoughts to answer your question, Susan.
Yeah, thanks. And George, perhaps, I don't know if this resonates to you, but perhaps you could share a bit about also how you see it and how that's led you to create Voy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of those things that Dr. Chatterjee talked about, I'm fully aligned. I think what we see is basically part of the inspiration of starting the company is we see healthcare as a patchwork of disconnected moments in our lives, right? So you may get to see your doctor once per year or check your blood test. If that, you have a different app to check your steps, a different one to improve your nutrition, perhaps a different one to manage your prescriptions or clinical care. All of those live in different disconnected silos. Mm-hmm. And I think that leads to poor outcomes, right? I think what we're excited about, and really it's incredibly hard, how do we use technology to build a seamless, continuous, personalized, effective journey that people want to use. It has to be a consumer-grade product that becomes a companion in people's lives on a daily and weekly basis, but one that connects those disconnected moments. Like how do you build in behavior change, lifestyle changes with clinical care, and all of that is informed, personalized, based on your own self, your own data, and lives with you. So yeah, I think we've been operating for the last 5 years. We helped just over 1 million people. We operate in Europe and Latin America, but I think we've built so much impactful things, but we're still at the very early of transforming that. Mm-hmm. It will take time, but yeah, what we're excited about is connecting those worlds that live in a very fragmented way in the healthcare system.
Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking of obviously data and the huge amounts of untapped data within healthcare, obviously we heard a lot of talks earlier this afternoon about AI, and healthcare is one of those huge sectors which, there are so many headlines around AI transforming. How much of that is sort of myth versus practicality? And I guess maybe George, we could start with you. Would love to hear about how Voy is using AI internally. Where do you think what do you think it does well versus where does it still struggle? And then perhaps Dr. Chatterjee, would love to hear from your perspective as a physician as well. How do you think AI can empower or perhaps help clinicians today who are obviously struggling under the burden of their care?
Sounds good. Yeah. So I think if you look at the utility of AI, I think healthcare is probably one of, or if not the biggest areas that it can transform, right? I think the way we look at it is there are two elements. One is personalization, and the other one is scaling quality of care, right? So it can have huge impact on both of those. We have in the company 100 full-time nutritionists, over 100 doctors and clinicians, and over that in terms of customer care. We have hundreds of thousands of consultations on a monthly basis for the last few years that we've used to train the model. We've built our own AI agent called Joy, part of our mission to bring joy and vitality in people's health. And Joy has been trained on that and now has the capabilities, every month has millions of interactions to really understand the individual data of our users, build personalized goals and plans around their nutrition activity, answer now the majority of the customer care queries, triage and pass in an informed, contextual way the query to the clinical staff to make their life easier, and generally have like a unique experience of one size fits one when they open the app and their companion that is very relevant for them. And every day, every week they interact, it's ever improving. I think the second thing here is on scalability. There's so many use cases for us, but just to mention one, we've seen at least 40% reduction of workload on our doctors. So they can focus on really what humans do best, which is provide care with focus and empathy. And that has led to much better outcomes and better patient satisfaction and also satisfaction for the people that work with us. There's so many more other use cases, but to me, the interesting applications here is how do you leverage data that, again, lives in very disconnected places, usually, to make the journey more personalized and effective and reduce the workload of people working in healthcare.
And Dr. Chatterjee, yeah, do you as a physician, do you think it's natural for physicians and clinicians to be adopting these tools? You know, where is there a push and pull? Yes, and how do you think
it's something I guess if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have been quite skeptical, because my view, based upon my 24 years experience now of seeing patients, is that getting someone better and in good health is a mixture of art and science. And I think there's a misunderstanding out there that it's just science, and it is absolutely not. It might be if you're in intensive care and you need to know the data and what this marker means and what your IV should be. But for most of the things we see, the best clinicians, there's a sixth sense we have. We are picking up actually what's really going on, and we understand that every patient is unique. Now, what I've learned also from chatting to George over the last sort of year or so is, and seeing what they've done at Voight, it's really interesting to see how an AI agent can really help an individual in ways that I wasn't expecting. People are more honest with an AI agent than they're going to be with a doctor. Or it's kind of incredible.
I don't know, what does that say about us as humans?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I learned back in 2015 when I did my first TV show, Doctor in the House, where I lived with patients or alongside them for 4 to 6 weeks to try and get them better. And it was one of the most incredible experiences for me. And I learned that, wow, I get 10 minutes with a patient in my practice. I had 6 weeks with these patients on telly. And I thought, even if I had an hour with a patient instead of 10 minutes, I still would not get stuff out of them that I saw in their house. Like in their house, I would see what their cupboards were actually full of, right? Not what they were telling me they were eating. I was actually watching it. Or I could see tension in a relationship between a husband and wife. I go, oh, I reckon this could be a driver behind your health. So I realized that actually patients, and I'm a patient as well, right? I would probably, if my doctor asked me what did I eat in one day, I'd probably tell them my best day, right? Not my worst day. And so bringing it back to AI, I think people are being really honest with AI because they don't feel judged by another human. So I think that could be a very, very powerful tool going forward, because if you're not honest, you've got no chance of improving your health. And I think going to George's first point there about personalization, that speaks to a wider problem I see these days, which is there's so much information out there, right? We think more data is a good thing. Maybe, right? We think more information is a good thing. Maybe, because now people get confused and they go, well, that expert says I should be on a low-carb diet. That expert says I should be on a whole food plant-based diet. That one's from Oxford, that's from Harvard, so who the hell should I believe, right? But that belief system is predicated on this idea that there's one right approach for everyone. Who's right? Well, maybe they're both right for different people. And that's why I think AI, if we can be honest and have this daily conversation with AI, it can help us figure out what's working best for us. So then you're less confused by when you see the latest media headline about this new trial. It's like, well, hold on a minute. I'm confident with my relationship and my blood markers that what I'm doing is working for me. So I think AI can play a role, and it wasn't the role that I was expecting a few years ago. It's more to do with that. I just think it's incredible that people will be way more honest with an AI than with another human being.
Yeah, no, there's so many points there I want to draw on, particularly when you said about this dichotomy between on one hand, there has never been more information available, and obviously your podcast is one of the most listened to health podcasts, but there are many others, and there's infinite amounts of content to watch or listen to online, and yet people are very confused and really struggling, I think, to really enact behavioral change. And as you mentioned earlier, we may hear something, we think, okay, well, we need to eat better or we need to sleep better, but actually doing that consistently seems to be where everyone falls short. So I'd love to hear from your 20 plus years as a physician, what do you see as helping people to actually make that more consistent behavioral change, and where, yeah.
Yeah, so my starting point is that every single human being wants to be healthy. Right? It's slightly counterintuitive, but I figured this out years into my career. Years ago, as a doctor, I thought, why is this person taking half a day off work to sit in here to wait to see me? Nobody wants to do that. Everyone wants to be healthy and well. Now, the fundamental problem is that for most of our evolution as humans, we lived in a world where the environment was supporting good health. Right? So in all these long-living populations around the world, like the blue zones, they're not trying to be healthy. They're not checking their data and their wearables. Everyday life is a little bit uncomfortable. They have to, they don't have the option of delivering their food to their door, right? They have to move their body, get the food, cook it. So most human beings cannot overcome their environment. That's why we've got a healthcare crisis, because the environment is dry. Unless you are super motivated and interested in health, you're going to end up having a health problem these days. That is the norm.
We're set up for failure.
We're set up for failure, right? So there's not many people can do it, right? So there'll be people in this room, high-performing people who are super motivated, who can do it. But there'll be people in this room also who really struggle. They listen to the podcast, they know what they should be doing, but they can't actually do it. It feels too difficult. So people need the right advice, first of all. They need empowering so they know that actually I need to find the right advice for me, not the right advice for my mum or my buddy at work or whatever. It's what works for me. And they need help. They need help navigating this really difficult environment. So, there are many ways you can do that. You can teach them the rules of behavior change, which like many tech companies will use to get you to be on their products for longer. Make something really easy to do and you will do it, right? So I remember, someone in this room could probably call me out on this statistic, but I remember 10 years ago when researching one of my books, I read some data showing that when Amazon moved to one-click ordering, I think their profits went up by, was it $300 million in a year? And a lot was attributed to that, because in the past it was, you had to take 3 or 4 steps before you placed an order. One-click ordering, suddenly it's so easy that people actually do that, where we're not applying those rules that business apply to health. It is possible for every single person to change their health when you give them the right support and the right advice. I've seen it a million times, and I believe in human beings' potential to change. But what they're not being given at the moment is the right support. And also, you've got to understand the media landscape now has become so toxic. Yeah. Right? There are major podcasts in the world whose goal is not to help you, but it's to pick a guest that will get the most controversy, right? And create the most noise, which will blow up on YouTube. But what it does is create confusion. Yeah. And so people are fighting this era of more and more information, and they all want to be well. And I do think there is when I do think AI and technology is going to be part of the answer, actually.
Yeah. And George, how do you, I think as we were saying, one of the things that was always inspired us about Voy is that you are very much targeting not just the biohacker or optimizer community. You are trying to reach the millions that Dr. Chatterjee mentioned here. So how have you sort of almost reverse engineer the products so to make it easier for people to have these consistent behavioral changes even when they are perhaps less motivated to do so, naturally?
Yeah, I think what we're really fortunate to have, especially the last 3-4 years, is voices like Rangan here that come with authenticity, knowledge, and humanity, and educate people and provide healthcare literacy and well-being literacy. And so we see a lot more intention and agency from people that want to improve their health. I think what we're trying to do is to use technology to create the structure and the tools to convert that into daily habits in a way that moves the needle, and build a companion around that. So I spoke earlier about our AI called Joy. Joy lives under our companion app. Our app basically helps you improve your nutrition, your activity. It helps you with clinical care, among many other topics. But what we see is 70% of our users are weekly active users in the app. So we've built the right products, obviously, but I think this number, at least compared to the ones I've seen in my experience, is really, really high. So people, if they have the tools, they will, they will invest in behavior change and stick to it. I think the really interesting thing for us is that this is not engagement for the engagement's sake. We see that translating to outcomes. Those people have far superior quality of life improvement versus the people who are not engaged, right? So I think, it's really, really exciting. I think it's what's really inspiring for both of us is how do we marry those worlds, and we're working on something that we're really excited about. The world will see it hopefully in a few months, but really excited to build together.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I never thought I'd be sort of, I've been chatting to George over the last year, and I think if you can crack, I think health is going to be one of the scarcest commodities in the future, if I can call it a commodity. And if you can crack a human being's desire to want to be well, because everyone wants to be well, I think you're going to have a thriving business and you're going to make a huge amount of impact. And what I've been trying to build together with George over the last few months, I'm super excited about, and hopefully we can say more very soon.
Fantastic. Watch this space, everyone. Well, I know I could chat with you both all afternoon, but I'm conscious we have a timer here about to go off. So perhaps just before we wrap up, would love to end on a more practical note, given there is a room full of people who are trying to be well. Dr. Chatterjee, what's the one thing you wish everyone would try to do or to take away from today?
Whilst I recognize we're all different, we all have different preferences, I firmly believe that in 2025, soon to be 2026, the most important practice for any one of us each day is a daily practice of solitude. I think we're bombarded with noise these days, from the inputs from the outside, even good quality inputs. I would say you need time to start listening to what's going on inside, because we've totally outsourced our inner expertise as humans to external experts. We've overly outsourced it. And I believe if human beings can start to reconnect with themselves, they will actually find very quickly, they will start to understand what is the right diet for me, where are things going wrong in my life, why do I keep overworking? All these things we actually know once we cut out the noise and start listening. So 10 minutes of silence a day will change your life, I guarantee it.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much.